Mr. Adefeko, in terms of you folks who are investors, those of you with big pockets, the Central Bank Anchor Borrowers Program on one side, but we have the Dangote Group also in that,
yes,
doing tomato and also getting into rice. Then there are new rice mills that the government
yes,
is establishing across the states. And then you look at all of you there who are bringing hundreds of millions of dollars, local and foreign investors. What are your experiences in investing in not just farming, but agro-processing, agro-commodities, agro-allied subsector?
I think what is important, Bosun, to note is that we need to understand that in agriculture, there's a value chain. First and foremost, let me speak quickly to budgetary provisions for agriculture. Budgetary provisions for agriculture has been very low in the last 10 to 15 years. This year, for example, the budgetary provision is less than 2%. And that is not in consonance with the Maputo Declaration of 2003, of which the AU states stated that at least 10% of the budgetary provision for agriculture should be. So, and they talked about the fact that in having 10% of your budget provision being for agriculture, between about 6% of that, okay, there should be a 6% contribution to GDP probably on a yearly basis, okay? But for me, I think that value chain approach is what we need to seamlessly focus on. You see, you cannot be everything to everybody. In that value chain, you have a whole gamut of players. And those players have their respective roles to play. I mean, Nigeria is number one in cassava, yet we import starch. Nigeria is number one in cocoyam. In granite, we're number one. Do you remember the granite pyramids? But all these things, we need to go back to the drawing board and make sure that we not only add value to our primary products by enhancing the value, but making sure that in that value chain, okay, we have the small-scale farmer and the large-scale farmers are accommodated. The large multinationals and the large behemoths help with scale, but the large behemoths and the large-scale manufacturing concerns offtake from the farmers, which is why it's very important to have the small-scale farmers in that value chain as well. But adding value is very critical for us, particularly as we move into this era of industrialization and competitiveness. As you know, and I'm one of those who canvas for it, for you to be competitive, you must always bring to bear your area of comparative advantage.
The commodities exchange is also part of the value chain. Do you agree that instead of not just having been farmers or being agro-allied, we need to list companies in agriculture? For example, we have Presco and Okomo Oil on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. We need more of that. But of course, we need a viable and up and running commodities exchange, don't we?
I agree with you to a large extent. Yes, we do. We have two now. We have the Abuja Commodity Exchange and we have the private one, which is FX. There is a lot going on. We can do better. But for a start, I think what is important is the commodities exchange need to have what you call inclusiveness. The small farmer needs to be present as well, needs to have a seat at that table. So it's not only important for the big players to sit or to be able to trade on the commodity exchange, but the small-scale farmer, okay, the small maize farmer in Jigawa, for example, or the sorghum or millet farmer anywhere else in the country should be able to come with his goods and be able to get a fair exchange, okay? So, as you know, the commodities exchange experience, and which everybody tends to learn from or allude to, is the one you had in Ethiopia, which was led by a certain lady called Elena, okay? So the Ethiopian commodity exchange is more or less the model which everybody is trying to adopt. But in Nigeria, like I said, we have two for now. One is private, one is government, but we can do better.
Well, let's talk about this. You folks are bringing billions of naira into the market. Central Bank is pouring billions into that. The federal government is doing its own at the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development and what have you. But folks are still looking at the price of rice on a daily basis per bag. Why is this so, Mr. Adefeko?
Well, there are two things. Like I alluded to in my intro, I talked about the fact that you have almost 2 million tons of rice coming in from neighboring Benin Republic, which is smuggled rice, okay? And that undermines the local producers like us, okay, in such a way that we're not competitive. So whatever pricing we come up with, we're not competitive because the rice that is smuggled comes across the borders undermines our price. And again, exchange rate dynamics and risk is a problem as well as the cost of paddy, okay? So that whole list or bucket, okay, affects the pricing. But again, it's important to note again that, like I said, giant strides have been made, okay, and it can only get better. What we just need to do right now is to make sure that we provide inputs that will give us better yields, okay? People often allude to the fact that Nigeria has 84 million hectares of arable land and less than 1/3 of that is cultivated. It's not about the land size these days because agriculture has moved, and it has moved with the times to the extent in which efficiencies have come in terms of technology, okay? And even with a small hectarage, if with the right inputs and the best and good soil mapping or soil testing and quality assessment, you can get better yields. The likes of Mozambique and Guinea-Bissau and even Benin Republic, in some cases with respect to some certain crops, are doing better than Nigeria in terms of yield. So I think all our agencies, our research institutes can do better rather than having symposia on capacity building every day. You need to do more in the areas of study of trying to improve yield for crops and that you have a comparative advantage in. So that is very, very important. The research institutes need to be funded. We need to have more agric extension officers per area and per farmer. So those things are very, very important. So intervention funds, so far so good on the part of the CBN and the federal government, but I think in terms of trying to improve our yield particularly, it's important because those inputs are important. Again, you notice that the federal government is working in the area of fertilizer, which started with the last administration, particularly with the former Minister of Agriculture, with the wallet, the e-wallet. So the fertilizer now gets directly to the farmer rather than having a middleman. So that is a good step. So for me, I think currently, I don't want to speak for government, but from us in the private sector, there's a bit more collaboration and there's a bit more public-private sector partnership and collaboration, and that is very, 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 very. That is something that is very heartening, you know, for those of us who are playing in the private sector. A lot of investment has come into the agricultural value chain. More can be done, and again, you must accept the fact that a lot of the produce we have is lost due to post-harvest losses. We have problems of access to market and storage. So that is one thing we must tackle. You have a lot of the goods that are stuck, you know, in the hinterland and can't come to market because of poor infrastructure.
May I respectfully say that we need to end this conversation. This has been very insightful from you and from your export advocacy group at NACIMA, of which you are the chairman. Thank you very much for weighing on this very important conversation that started, of course, where the state of agriculture is. We thank you for your time today, and we hope to see you again on Business Morning.